Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your shared sources and really pull out the crucial insights, delivering them in a way that hopefully sticks. Think of it as your personal shortcut to understanding what matters.
And today, we're plunging into a really fascinating work, Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil.
This book, it has quite a backstory, doesn't it? Written way back in 1938, but not actually released for decades.
Yeah, that delay itself just builds this sense of anticipation.
It really does.
And the core idea is just as captivating. Hill presents it as, well, a direct conversation with the devil.
Wow.
Exploring those forces, the subtle ones and maybe not so subtle ones that can stop us achieving our potential.
And it's not just some dusty old book either. It's got some pretty big endorsements. T. Harv Eker, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. He says it lays out a clear path for taking control of your financial life.
Right. And Jean Chatzky, the financial journalist, she calls it another world changer from Hill. Says it can clear up spiritual confusion. That's strong praise.
Definitely. So our mission today is to really dig into Hill's core arguments. We want to unpack his ideas on self-mastery and how we can overcome these limitations he talks about, the ones he connects to this devil figure.
Okay.
So let's unpack this. Hill introduces this fascinating concept of an other self. What exactly is he getting at there?
Well, think of your other self as this inner reserve, strength and clarity, basically. But it's activated not when things are easy, but when you're really pushed. It's about recognizing that challenges can unlock a deeper level of thinking. Hill saw it as the part of you that kind of wakes up when your back's against the wall, forces you to find solutions.
He uses some powerful personal examples, right? Like walking away from that successful magazine.
Yeah, the Golden Rule magazine.
And then that training school, even though it was making money, it sounds like he was really grappling with things.
Oh, absolutely. He describes this period of intense indecision during those times. But then this other self seemed to step in, bringing a sense of calm, a clear inner voice.
Like a command.
Exactly. In his case, the command to complete his life's work, his philosophy. It's those moments of clarity, that cut through all the noise and confusion.
So maybe when we feel totally overwhelmed, that could actually be a sign that this other self is trying to break through.
That's a really interesting way to frame it, yeah. It flips the script on feeling overwhelmed.
And this idea, it connects directly to his belief about failure, doesn't it? That it often comes before success.
Absolutely. Hill was firm on this. Failure plays a critical role. He even said most real failures are due to limitations which men set up in their own minds.
Right, so failure makes us stop and think, re-examine things.
It forces us to. It's a catalyst for growth, pushes us out of our ruts.
He even talks about that disturbing story, the murder of Don R. Mellett, and the anonymous warning he got. That sounds like a huge personal crisis. Maybe something that really could have triggered this other self.
You have to imagine it was a time of intense fear, real uncertainty for him. And he links that experience to the poem Invictus.
My head is bloody, but unbowed.
Exactly, highlighting how vital it is to master fear, to take control of your own mind, your own spirit, even when things are really, really tough.
Okay, now here's where it gets, really interesting. The interview with the devil.
Right.
Whether it was, a literal chat or just this powerful thought experiment, the insights are pretty extraordinary.
They really are. And Hill himself acknowledges that ambiguity. Was it real or imagined? But he stresses the value, the understanding he gained from it.
And the devil's big claim, controlling 98% of people.
98%. It's a staggering number.
How does he supposedly manage that?
By exploiting the unused space of the human brain, basically through the constant drip, drip, drip of negative thoughts.
So he thrives when we're mentally passive.
That's the idea. When we're not consciously directing our minds, he slips in.
And his main tools for this, manipulation.
Fear. That's his number one weapon. He lays out 6 core fears.
Okay, what are they?
Fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love, fear of old age, and fear of death.
Wow, that pretty much covers the spectrum of human anxiety, doesn't it?
It really does. Think of them as these seeds of doubt and worry he's constantly trying to plant in our minds.
But some of the devil's views on society are, quite unexpected.
They really are. Like, he expresses this strong dislike for the Rockefeller fortune.
Really? Why?
Specifically because of their philanthropy, their efforts to fight disease and improve living conditions. Disease, according to the devil, is one of his best allies.
That's chillingly practical from his perspective.
Isn't it? And he also mentions things like cigarettes and liquor, which, remember, this is 1938.
Right, different context.
He sees them as tools to weaken willpower, to undermine independent thought, making people more susceptible to his influence, clouding their judgment.
And he even talks about bigger things, like instigating world wars, using mass fear for control.
Yeah, on a huge scale. It really underscores the strategy of creating widespread anxiety, manipulating whole populations through fear.
Okay, so let's get into what the devil calls his cleverest trick, this habit of drifting.
Yes, drifting.
What exactly is that in this context?
Well, the devil defines drifting as basically not thinking for yourself. It's allowing life to just happen to you without setting your own course or making active, conscious choices.
It's kind of like being on autopilot, but for your whole life.
Precisely. And the devil boasts about how he encourages this, especially in young people, by fostering a lack of clear purpose in education.
How so?
If students go through school without really identifying goals, figuring out what they want, they become, prime candidates for drifting later on.
He even criticizes overprotective parents and the public school system for not teaching independent thinking. That might hit home for some listeners.
It probably will. The idea is if kids are always rescued or just memorizing facts without learning how to think critically, they don't build that mental muscle needed to chart their own course.
And drifting gets linked to things like laziness, indifference, procrastination. It's like a downward spiral.
Totally. One area leads to another. And the devil even claims he influences political leaders to drift, suggesting it can lead towards dictatorship, a big fear in the 1930s, of course.
Interesting. Now, the devil's view on money is specific.
It is. He repeats that old phrase, the love of money is the root of all evil. But he makes a key distinction. He suggests that people who get wealthy by providing genuine service, real value, they're actually harder for him to control.
So it's how you get it and why that matters.
According to this viewpoint, yes.
Yeah.
Focusing on service makes you less susceptible. Now he draws this really sharp contrast between the drifter and the non-drifter.
Okay, what does the drifter look like?
The drifter, according to the devil, well, they have strong opinions on everything, but very little actual knowledge.
Oops.
They blame everyone else for their problems. They put things off constantly. They overindulge. It's not a pretty picture.
And the non-drifter?
The non-drifter is the opposite. Always engaged in something purposeful. They have a definite plan, a major goal. They're direct, honest, willing to serve others, and crucially, they use their own mind. They think for themselves.
And the key thing here, it sounds like, is that being a non-drifter isn't some special talent. It's a choice.
Exactly. It's available to everyone. It's about choosing to actively use your mind, not just letting it idle.
Now, the devil also uses flattery. How does that work?
Flattery, he says, is a big one. It plays on our vanity, our ego. It makes us complacent, more likely to drift.
Because we like hearing good things.
Right. We get hooked on that external validation and we stop looking inward, stop thinking critically about ourselves. And he says this works on people of all ages.
That's sobering. This then leads into the idea of learning from failure, right? The flip side, almost.
Yes, exactly. While flattery pulls you towards drifting, learning from failure is what non-drifters do. Hill's famous quote. Every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent success.
So it's about reframing. Seeing failure not as the end, but as feedback, containing a lesson.
Precisely. Non-drifters see setbacks as temporary. They learn, adjust, and keep going towards their goal. Which brings us to another concept. Hypnotic rhythm.
Hypnotic rhythm. Okay, what's that?
It's presented as this natural law. Basically, the tendency for our thoughts, repeated over and over, to become fixed habits, like grooves in the mind.
Like whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap.
Exactly that principle. And the danger, the devil says, is that drifting leads to a negative hypnotic rhythm. Pessimistic, unproductive thoughts become automatic.
He even dismisses luck, doesn't he? Says everything has a cause.
Right. No luck, just causes and effects, even if we don't see the causes. And he stresses the power of thought. All deeds follow thoughts.
It really puts the focus back on controlling our own minds.
Absolutely. The devil even calls himself the discourager of free and independent thought. But the empowering part is the ability to overcome this lies in our own power of thought, which Hill connects to infinite intelligence.
Which leads us towards the solutions, the 7 principles he outlines, starting with definiteness of purpose. Why is that number 1?
Hill presents these 7 principles as the way to break that negative hypnotic rhythm. Definiteness of purpose is the cornerstone because it gives your thoughts a clear, unwavering direction. It's the direct opposite of drifting.
And he says we're all born with the potential for it, but most lose it.
Yeah, through inaction, basically, not committing. He compares it to a muscle. If you don't use it, it weakens.
So it needs constant systematic use.
Exactly. And the devil himself admits he's powerless against someone with a truly definite purpose.
But there's a warning, too, isn't there? About loving anything other than your purpose.
Yes, a cautionary note. Excessive attachment to other things, even good things, can cloud your reason and pull you off course. It requires real focus.
The devil observes that people who gain power have to become definite, which might seem hard to others.
Right, that single-mindedness can be perceived negatively sometimes. Now, this connects to the devil's critique of education and religion. What's his beef there?
His main issue with education is that it focuses too much on memorizing facts, not enough on teaching people how to think for themselves, how to analyze independently.
He actually fears a reversal where students become their own instructors, developing their own minds.
And he argues that neither schools nor churches really give young people a practical understanding of their own minds, which he sees as a huge gap.
A fundamental failure, in his view.
And he has some pretty radical ideas for reform, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. He suggests things like letting kids be their own instructors more, teaching definiteness of purpose directly, teaching about habits, hypnotic rhythm, the difference between temporary defeat and failure.
Teaching fearless expression, prompt decisions, critical thinking.
Exactly. Understanding harmony, self-control, the brain itself, even things like the law of compensation and realizing limitations are self-imposed. It's a whole curriculum based on self-mastery.
He talks about the University of Life being the real school and suggests maybe starting these ideas in private schools to create demand.
Yeah, a sort of market-driven approach to changing the public system. He suggests roundtables instead of lectures, individual instruction, bringing in professionals, making it way more practical.
Okay, moving on to another key principle, self-discipline. What's the focus here?
The devil's perspective focuses on mastering our basic physical appetites. You know, food, sex, but also the urge to just spout opinions constantly.
So self-mastery is about controlling those urges, giving yourself what's needed, holding back what isn't.
That's the core idea. He even mentions, rather practically, eliminating bodily waste efficiently. And he talks quite a bit about the sex drive.
It's power, but also it's danger.
Right. The importance of transmuting that powerful energy into other creative outlets rather than just dissipating it. He warns that overindulgence drains creative energy and harms health.
And the opinion thing. What's wrong with expressing opinions?
It's about loosely organized opinions, the grasshopper mind, jumping from one thing to another without deep thought, offering unsolicited advice, writing uninvited letters. He sees it as dissipating mental energy.
So the real power is internal, your own thoughts.
Exactly. That's the only dependable power, according to this view. Self-discipline is key to harnessing it, which leads us back to learning from adversity in more detail.
Right. The third principle, what more does he add?
He really hammers home that idea. Every adversity contains the seed of an equivalent advantage. And again, stressing the difference between temporary defeat and actual failure, which is just quitting.
And failure can actually be useful.
It can be. It can break that negative hypnotic rhythm, give you a jolt, allow for a fresh start. He uses the analogy of nature using illness or economic depressions to break negative cycles.
He also touches on the subconscious mind again.
Yes, describing it not as a physical thing, but as this organized universal energy where intensely emotional thoughts get stored. And he brings up the sixth sense.
Accessing information beyond the usual five senses.
Right, tapping into other minds or infinite intelligence. He also defines a proper relationship as one bringing benefit to everyone involved and reminds us life gives everyone the power of positive thought to overcome adversity.
And he mentioned the law of compensation again.
The idea that effects, good or bad, can ripple across generations. Time is a key factor in how consequences unfold.
Okay, so that brings us to the last few principles. Environment, time, harmony, and caution. Let's touch on those.
Environment is about choice. Consciously choosing your influences, because nature dislikes a vacuum. If you're not filling your mind with positive influences,
negative ones rush in.
That's the idea. Nature abhors idleness, mentally too.
And time.
Time relates back to hypnotic rhythm. It's what makes thought habits permanent, positive, or negative. It takes voluntary effort to change negative patterns that have set in over time. But time is also what turns experience into wisdom, right?
Yes, but not automatically. Time plus thinking, analyzing your experiences, that's what builds wisdom. Knowledge alone isn't enough. You need time and the desire for wisdom. Makes sense. Harmony.
Nature forces us to align with whatever dominates our environment. So successful people actively create harmonious environments that support their definite purpose.
And finally, caution.
Yeah, but true caution, not over caution, which he says is just fear. It's about careful judgment, especially in choosing who you associate with. They massively influence your success or failure.
So he ties it all together. Drifting, hypnotic rhythm, time. Showing how they determine outcomes. He uses examples like Samuel Insull's fall.
And contrasts it with FDR's initial definiteness of purpose in his first term.
And it's striking that Hill's own research, looking at thousands of people, found that same 98% figure for drifting. It lines up exactly with the devil's claim.
It really does. It suggests this isn't just a fanciful idea, but reflects a widespread reality, or at least how Hill perceived it.
So, to quickly recap the big takeaways. The immense power of our own thoughts, the real danger of just drifting, the absolute necessity of a definite purpose, strong self-discipline, learning from every setback, consciously choosing our environment, understanding how time shapes habits and wisdom, aiming for harmony, and using careful caution.
Yeah, those are the core pillars drawn from this.
Well, this unique dialogue Hill presents, a profound perspective on self-mastery.
And we really hope this deep dive has sparked some aha moments for you, our listener, without being too overwhelming. So here's a final thought to maybe chew on. Which one of these principles really jumped out at you today? Which one feels most relevant to where you are right now? And maybe what's just one small, concrete step you could take, maybe even today, to start applying that principle in your own life? Could Outwitting the Devil, written so long ago, actually offer some surprisingly timely guidance for navigating our world today? It's definitely worth thinking about how these timeless ideas might offer fresh perspectives for us now. We'd encourage you to explore Hill's work further if this sparked your interest, and just keep reflecting on these concepts.